It's time for world politics. I'm gonna bring Sasha Starr in and Jim Ead and see what they've got on their mind on the political landscape and all along those lines. So definitely, I did see where apparently Trump is saying that he's going to make Venezuela great again. He's saying he can do this in a year and everything along those lines. So we'll see if this is actually the case or not. But that's what he's claiming he can do and everything along those lines. So how are you gentlemen doing on this particular day, and what are you finding on the political landscape? Because I did see that as I was at a cultural center that I work at earlier today, so I didn't get as much of the news as I usually do, but I did see where he had said that he was going to make Venezuela great again.
Well, first he will make America great again, and now Venezuela, then Greenland, and then whole world will be great again. We'll see how that happened. Let's concentrate on what's happened in Venezuela because it affects our investment decisions in many cases. It's not just oil, it's many other things. What's interesting is that U.S. Started to implement the strategy of stopping any sales of Venezuelan oil anywhere in the world except United States. So what they did, there were so-called the dark tankers belonging to supposedly to Russia, but maybe somebody else. And sometimes one day it belongs to Russians, and next day to somebody else, and then third day it's now back to Russia. They're changing flags and they're changing the registry in a moment or so on. And they already arrested four supposedly Russian tankers. Two of them were previously, and now one very interesting case is that tanker that was supposed to get some Venezuelan oil, but in the view of what's happening there right now, they left Venezuela empty-handed, and U.S. Immediately started actions to arrest this tanker. Now it was under some uh, registration, which is unclear even what, and the name of the tanker was quite. One day it was under one name, and then second day, one day they realized that U.S. Warships are about to arrest it. They changed name and the flag. By the way, what's interesting is they didn't have a Russian flag, so they sort of make up some kind of a flag or what it looks like a flag, and they started to run to the north around Iceland and Scotland and so on. Anyway, they were stopped, and in spite of the fact that Russians sent supposedly a submarine and some warships, but they were still a little bit away from the moment that the tanker were arrested, and American troops went on the tanker, and they found some incredible things there. And one interesting comment was that Russians were very lucky that submarine and the warships, they were still away from the place where it was arrested, around Faroe Islands. Now, what's interesting is that the comment was that it's good that they were late because American would arrest the submarine and all those warships as well. So it was a very lucky instance for Russians that they were late there. So that's a story. Now, what about Venezuelan oil? Venezuela used to produce 3 million barrels a day. Now it's down to one. It's $1 million a day, barrels a day. That is less than 1% of the world um, production. So that, even if it would stop completely, the market will not even feel that something happened with Venezuelan oil. So it's not the case that the prices of oil will skyrocket because of that, because it's a minuscule on a production of world production of oil. So now the question is, what has to be done to get increase? So right now with this million, they already, because they cannot sell it anywhere. So they all this the places where they store the storage of oil in Venezuela is full beyond capacity. They cannot
Well,
store it. They have some of their own tankers that are also full. So there's nothing Venezuela can do, as they did stop any oil production at all, because they don't have any outlet of what to do with this oil. So the Norwegian Institute of Oil and Gas, they did their calculations, which are very credible. And I just listened to the video produced by Michael Krutichin, who is a great expert of oil and gas. He is a great expert on Iran. Actually, he speaks Farsi, and he used to live in Iran for I think about 4 years previously. So right now he lives in Norway. So what he's now saying is that this Norwegian Institute of Oil and Gas, they calculated that to increase production to 3 million barrels a day, it will be done the earliest by the year 2040. And the investment required
oh well.
is $180 billion. And now it's interesting to see where this money will come from. Is it coming from Chevron or ConocoPhillips or ExxonMobil or whoever? They are scratching to raise $2 billion just to sustain enough production, even that 1 million a day, so they would sell it to United States at undisclosed prices. Supposedly it will be probably a fraction of the normal prices. And all this situation, frankly, I don't see how it can benefit American people or Venezuelan people. It may benefit the oil companies, but even
Hmm.
that is really unclear, because before they will get this up to 3 million barrels a day, they have to produce investment of $180 billion, and there's no company in the world that can produce this type of investment, and payout is not earlier than 2040. This is a bizarre. This is absolutely beyond comprehension of what Trump is really doing, although supposedly he's a good businessman. He's completed Trump University, and he's running casinos and many other enterprises. None of them is profitable, and this is its collapse, complete collapse of his foreign policy, domestic policy. I don't even discuss that. Jim, what do you think about all that?
Yeah.
Well, my first question is, when did we declare war on Venezuela?
Um, War on Venezuela. I've never been informed about any war on Venezuela. There's no war. I think Venezuela is a nice little country, and there is no war. So
There's no
really,
war.
under what pretense? What is the mechanism of U.S. extracting Venezuelan oil? There have to be declaration of war. There has to be act of capitulation
Hmm.
of Venezuela. So there will be reparation of Venezuela paying to U.S. And here comes the Venezuelan oil, although it's unclear how much oil is there, because
Well,
U.S. was
speaking.
50 billion barrels. And where is
Oh,
this 50 billion barrels are coming from, and when? I
Well,
mean,
in the
well,
absence
speaking
of a
of
declaration, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say, speaking of reparations, apparently Trump earlier today, and you can look it up if you see it online and everything, Jim, is upset at the UN because apparently there was a reparations council that he is upset with the UN because they're having a council around reparations of different countries and everything like that. So he's already upset over this notion of reparations, and I guess it's thinking about pulling the US out of the UN because of some reparations council that they have going on as well. So this is the first I heard about this, but I did see that as I was looking at some news briefs earlier this afternoon.
Interesting. So this is to me kind of like the U.S. is against the world, because and the absence of a declaration of war calls into question the legality of all of these different things that Trump is doing. There's certainly a violation of international law, and I believe that we were a member in good standing in the international community, in the UN, and I think all of that is up for grabs now because, killing citizens of Venezuela in their boats, strikes me without a declaration of war. There are rules for engagement, and it's nothing short of murder. And what they did with the president and his wife was nothing short of kidnapping. And this arresting people in international waters at boats sounds like piracy to me. And
totally sounds like piracy.
Yeah, it's like I want that, so I'll take it. Is that how we are operating now as a country? And I don't like you, so I will kidnap you. What I believe is happening. As Sasha and I've discussed in the past, Putin is not a communist; he's a czar. And what America's tried to do is export the democratic values that this country used to stand for. And instead, Trump has imported czarist tendencies, which means whatever Trump wants, he gets, he takes. And the America does have the military might to do this, but we've always had wise counsel against overstepping our bounds. And this seems to have been forgotten, that there are limits to the power that you set on yourselves, because it's not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do without giving person a chance to surrender. You bomb them out of their boats. You shoot them out of the skies. You go in an incredible military tactical operation, kidnap a president of a sovereign country. These all seem to me, they strike me as gravely illegal acts committed by our president. Now, there's casinos in Trump University. Trump University was found to be fraudulent. He declared half a dozen bankruptcies. He was convicted of over 30 felonies. This guy has a track record of criminal behavior. And these are the crimes now committed on behalf of the American country. The culture does not support this. Our history does not support this. He cited the Monroe Doctrine, which is written in 1823. A great deal has happened since 1823, including world wars. And is Trump trying to position ourselves for another world war? And world wars in the nuclear age are not something to take lightly. Not that they ever are. But these results it's incalculably stupid.
And by the way, this is what I found out. It says Trump pulls the U.S. out of racist UN forum that pushed global reparations. So he signed an executive order, another one of his lovely executive orders on yesterday, to pull the U.S. out of the UN coalition the State Department officials believe has been involved in this notion of global reparations. So apparently he's quite upset at this, and because the State Department officials claim has been, they're saying that he's pulling them out of the U.S. Coalition that State Department officials claim has been pushing unconstitutional and racist policies, including a push for global reparations. So the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent promoted racial grievances and victim-based social policies within the world's governing body that ran afoul of the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment and Equal Protection Clause, according to Trump administration officials. So this is what he's pulling us out of, is this whole notion around even exploring reparations in a number of these nations and everything along those lines. So, yeah. And I don't know if you heard about it, but there was a ICE agent. It was very ugly. I did see the video,
Yeah.
and it was very scary and everything. Where the ICE agent was apparently trying to detain a resident in Minneapolis and actually opened fire, and I believe killed the individual as well. And that happened earlier this week as well, and everything along those lines. So ICE is out there and doing a number of things that are very scary and everything like that. I just found out recently about a individual, and this was before ICE, that there was a effort in Atlanta that had built a cop city, which is going to be like a training facility and everything like that. And they were going to do it in the forest. And there were a number of in Antifa types, but also some others that were just organizing environmentalists and everything like that. So I was actually watching a documentary where they actually killed one of the gentlemen because they were dressing up as animals. I think this gentleman had dressed up as the turtle and all along those lines. And he was actually brutally killed by some of the police forces and everything like that. And they're definitely still planning to build that. And there's a plan to build a lot of these kind of cop training centers throughout the United States. So it sounds like we might be moving more toward Russia than we would like, Sasha. I don't know your take on this, but it sounds like we're moving more toward that direction and everything along those lines. So what is your take on this kind of militarization of American society?
Well, first of all, remember this right of Americans to own firearms. The reason for that always been stated that they have the right to have firearms to protect themselves from tyrant, to have a power in the United States. So with the case of ISIS, I really don't understand why Americans cannot figure out how to protect themselves against ISIS by using their firearms. And hold on, because there's I don't understand under what jurisdictions they are acting. They're not a police, they're not armed forces, they're like nothing. They're thugs. Who definitely, there has to be uprising against them. And it would be totally legal because they are harming U.S. citizens.
And that's actually one of the things that the folks in Atlanta were doing. Because, like I said, there was a mixture of people. There were some Antifa folks. There were definitely some environmentalists and a number of other folks. But they were actually, as my understanding, destroying some of the property of some of the vendors. They were going to do some of the building and construction in that forest area and everything, because they were definitely being some radical actions, and some people would say that it was a form of nonviolent resistance, but it was the destruction of property and everything like that. So I'm imagining that more and more people may start having that attitude and everything. I wouldn't even be surprised if we don't see the rise of the Black Panthers and other kind of groups. I'm not saying that I'm backing that, but I would not be surprised if we don't see those kind of groups reemerge in order to defend communities against folks, whether that's the Black Panthers or the Brown Berets, I think they're called, or a number of other kinds of organizations that had that kind of history. What is your take? I know you're a very peaceful man, Jim, in terms of what you want for the world and all along those lines, but what is your take on this notion that some people may be ready to take up arms even against those that they are opposed to?
What is our alternative? Are we to become numb to this? Because this violates everything that the country used to stand for. So one of the powers that we still have right now is the power to vote. And we can vote anybody who supports this out of office and elect people who are against this sort of behavior. And that power still remains the American citizen. And I would use that before I would use violence. Because as Martin Luther King said, hate does not drive out hate.
But Jim, let me ask you this. Where is the Congress? Where is the Senate? Where is the judiciary? I mean, there is a very well thought out the division of powers in the United States. Yes. And it's nowhere to be seen now.
250 years, and the checks and balance system has been working, sometimes better than others, but by and large, it has been working, and we've survived many, many challenges. And I believe we will survive this one too. But Trump represents a clear and present danger.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and nobody is really opposing him because he's surrounded by yes men who are doing everything, whatever he tells them to do. In Congress and Senate, they're like almost maybe they went on a trip to Maldives Island holidays. I don't know, they're nowhere to be seen. Do they still exist? In
Yes,
they're representatives of American people, talking about House. So this, do American people question their representatives of what's going on?
well, some people support it. We can't turn a blind eye to, roughly maybe even a third of the country still supports this kind of violence, this kind of anti-American sentiment of might makes right. Um, and some of them are saying it's about time that we, stuck our thumbs in people's eyes around the world. But this has not been our history. It has been a process of engagement with foreign powers and to try to build alliances rather than to fight wars. And it's so amusing to me that Trump is lobbying for the Nobel Peace Prize when he
I
is.
don't think that it's in play anymore because of what
Yeah,
was
yeah,
Venezuela. I think it's all done and over with, especially now with discussions who's going to be next, the Colombia or Greenland or whatever else. He's not talking about Canada anymore. By the way, Canada,
Cuba.
Cuba. Canada, by the way, brought enormous amount of Ukrainian-produced drones and sea drones as well. So there's a huge wall will be on Canadian-U.S. border, and it's not going to be easy. It's not a Venezuela type of situation. So what he's going to do is going to bring our Prime Minister Carney to New York and put him in a jail next cell to Maduro.
Next to Maduro, who is apparently already in the same jail with Sean Puffy Combs. Apparently, that's the same jail that Puffy Combs is in, and everything like that. But I did have a question for both of you, since you are in the investment space. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that there were rules against certain kinds of investments and our government officials and everything like that. Because I'm seeing this story, and I'm thinking that this goes against what is supposed to be allowed. But correct me if I'm wrong, and I could be wrong. I've been wrong before and everything. But Trump is instructing representatives to buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds. So he's saying that this is going to be a way to lower the rates and everything like that. But that sounds like that's almost like insider trading and all along those lines, which I know is illegal and everything like that. But Trump said he is issuing that directive because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two government-sponsored mortgage issuing entities, are flush with cash. So apparently they're flush with cash, and he's asking the representatives to buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds. Now, I don't claim to be a lawyer. I mean, I know we got a founder that's a lawyer, that being Nick Palveda and everything like that. But and I have friends that are lawyers as well, and I could probably ask them. But it seems to me like that's very illegal and everything like that. So is it legal for them to do that?
There's much more to it. What's happening in investment space makes remember Nancy Pelosi with her insider trading. She looks like a schoolgirl compared to what's happening right now. For example, Trump in one day just recently. So you can take a look at the S&P trading. There was a day when he, just before the market closed, he announced that all these companies, U.S. companies which are participating in the defense industry, they are all scumbags and they're charging exorbitant charges. And the fact was that there was an announcement of $2 trillion for defense spending. Now it's going to be reduced to only one. The market collapsed in the last 10 minutes of trading. The S&P went down like 10% or so, if not more. Guess what? Overnight, as soon as the market closed, he said that no, it's not going to be $1 trillion, but 1.5. So obviously the futures opened significantly higher next day. So people who bought calls after this announcement and the market went down, they make exorbitant amount of money. So now they can buy all kind of bonds and so on. It's like a payback scheme. So okay, I'll give you a little bit of money, make money, buy calls, cash out, and then you, with this money, you buy mortgages, bonds, with whatever other institution. So this happening now, something that even a few years ago would be unthinkable in America, that something like that would so blatantly. It reminds me the Liberation Day, when the whole market went down to 20%, and then it quickly recovered because then he back down on his tariffs or so on. And even tariffs themselves, this is nothing but he single-handedly put a new taxes on American people.
It's a tax. Taxes.
It's nothing but the taxes supposedly should be brought by Congress. So this is what I don't understand. Where is the Congress and the Senate? And there is no institutions left in the United States. They're hiding, they're biding their time. They're waiting maybe for midterm elections or maybe presidential election in 3 years' time or something, because they definitely hiding and they are scared to oppose Trump. All of them.
They are scared but I think people are starting to grow a bit of a spine. But part of the problem is there's been a gross overreach of the executive branch. But the Supreme Court has not stood up and said you can't do this. So he's not getting pushback from the courts, except in lower courts, in federal courts, he's getting pushback. But I would go back to 30 felony accounts. If it was you or me, we would be in jail. But Trump doesn't think that there are any consequences to his actions, and he's got reason to believe that. 6 bankruptcies, these people still give him money. This bank won't give me money. Okay, I'll go overseas and get the money from a different bank. So he's always thought that he can get away with this stuff, and he still thinks that. And until someone says, no, you have to stop, or will invoke a different amendment and remove you from power, or until we get to the midterms and people are elected into office who will have the backbones to stand up to him and say, no, you cannot do this. We've had some defections, like Marjorie Taylor Greene has resigned. Some of these people that used to be, waving Trump banners behind them, are no longer supporting him. So we're seeing this, but it has not yet risen to the crescendo that's necessary to remove a president from power. But his abuse of power has no end.
Jim, even today, it's very unclear whether the Republicans have majority in the House, because some people resigned, some people died, and they don't have any meetings where the question of majority.
The speaker will not call them to session. Yes.
No. So this is a complete disarray of the system of government of the United States. It's a complete crisis, I would say. And it's only, we are talking about just domestic issues, international issues. Now the question is, who is next? So Cuba and Ecuador and possibly Colombia and Greenland. And under what pretense he can take over Greenland, where it's...
He has no claim to it. However, how can we take a moral high ground with Putin invading Ukraine?
Absolutely.
How can we take a moral high ground if China invades Taiwan?
Yeah. Don't have that moral high ground at all. Yeah, but and you've mentioned it before, Sasha, and you as well, but I'm still trying to figure out this quote, and you're going to love this one because this apparently came yesterday, but he was talking about Venezuela and us running Venezuela. And he said, we will rebuild it in a very profitable way. We're going to be using oil, and we're going to be taking oil. We're getting oil prices down, and we're going to be giving money to Venezuela, which they desperately need. Isn't this the same man that basically ran and went bankrupt on a lot of businesses and everything? So how is he going to rebuild something when he can't even rebuild his own businesses and everything along those lines? So that's what I'm trying to figure out, is how he's going to rebuild something when he's had a tremendous amount of non-success. So what is your take on this idea that we're going to rebuild another country, much less another industry, which is the oil industry, when he's had tremendous success. And yes, I am being sarcastic, with his casinos, with his hotels, with his number of other ventures as well.
Using the power of the presidency to line his own pockets and those of his family members, he's been successful at doing that. But what happened to the Trump Bibles and Trump vodka and Trump steaks, and none of these things have panned out the way Trump foresaw them panning out. And he has a track record of failure that he has portrayed as a track record of major success. But he has never been a success. He got funding from his father. And when his casinos were bankrupt, his father would buy, loads of chips for him, not with the intention of using them, but with the intention of returning them to them. So he's been getting loans from his daddy, and his daddy he took credit for some of the things his daddy did. But his daddy's no longer around, and who's going to give him the money now to continue to run his nefarious schemes?
Yeah, that's going to be the question, is who's going to give him that money. I know you got your show tomorrow, and we'll get ready to wrap up shortly and everything, because I've got to get to the other show as well. And we've had the good discussion here and everything. But what is the status of what's going on in Ukraine, if you want to give people a little bit of a tip as to what we can expect on tomorrow's show on Friday and everything like that?
Well, Ukraine is a very interesting case. So Zelensky is playing a game where he says Trump is the greatest in the world since sliced bread, and there's nothing in the world bigger and better than Trump. But essentially what he's doing, he wants to a process of having anti-Russian coalition with all the Europeans. And Europeans, they have an idea that sooner or later Trump will come to a point that he will understand his place and he will be together with the Europeans or so on. So they don't want to cut their association with U.S. and Trump and so on. Now, in the reality is that Zelensky in Ukraine is now a formidable military power. They have the strongest and the biggest army in Europe. They are fighting incredibly well against Russians, and not only in the local skirmishes that are still going on, and Russia cannot get ahead even 100 meters. They just can't. They're fighting, they're sending their troops that are dying at enormous speed. They're doing this storms, attacks, where they send small groups of, say, 100 people, and they're being killed by drones, by just anything, and only 2 survive out of 100. They're coming back, they get another 98 people, and they start attacking exactly in the same place, same tactics. It's around 1,500 people a day of Russians are being killed there. This is incredible. It's never happened in a military history where people would continue attacking the same place where they are being eliminated, and they're starting in 20 minutes to start exactly the same attack. This is incredible, and Ukrainians have no choice to keep killing these poor people. And there is no progress for Russians whatsoever. But Ukrainians, they are now flying inside Russia with their drones, 1,000 kilometers, 1,500 kilometers inside of Russia, and they are destroying their refineries. So Russia, forget about Venezuela's oil, they will not have their own oil very soon, if that is going on for some time now. It's really a danger for Russians, and I don't know what they're going to do about it. So I think with all this Putin's rhetorics, I think he's getting to understand that war has to stop. There's no benefit for him to continue this war, nothing whatsoever. So I really think that, on the other hand, if there will be no peace, Ukraine will simply destroy Russian army. They are doing that right now.
Yep. Definitely, that's what's going on there, and I know we'll have more discussion about this on tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, right after the World Edition. I think we've got a filmmaker coming on that's done a film about politics and all along those lines. I've got to reach out to them and see if they're confirmed and all in that space. But definitely, always good hearing from you two gentlemen and everything like that. So, Jim, I don't know if you got any final thoughts that you want to share with us. Otherwise, we'll get out of here. We'll have an abbreviated version of World Politics, and we'll be back with World Edition on tomorrow.
All right. My final thing is to not forget Gaza and what's going on in the Middle East. And it's there are people starving at enormous, alarming rates.
We haven't even touched Iran and what's happening there.
And that's, there's much more to talk about than Venezuela. But, I understand why the majority of our time right now, because who knows what Trump will do next.
Right. Who knows what he'll do next, but we'll definitely be reaching in and having further discussions about Gaza as well as Iran and other parts of the world. Yes. But I thoroughly enjoyed having both of you on this particular day, and we'll be back with further discussions on tomorrow on World Edition as well as on the Ukraine-Russia-China show.
Great to see you both, and take care until I see you again.
Okay, Jim, you may join us on tomorrow Ukrainian show at 11 o'clock our time, and also the chess show at 12 o'clock our time.
Send me the links. Okay.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
I'll send you the links. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.